Michael Saylor, MicroStrategy. I'm going to share with you my perspectives on both and how they relate to Bitcoin. Hope you enjoy the show. Let's roll. It's Sir Ulric, and are you down with the Underground? MicroStrategy ticker symbol MSTR was recently inducted into the celebrated NASDAQ 100, and they want to own as much Bitcoin as they possibly can. Their actions over the last 3 years have been as unstoppable as the Terminator, throwing every dollar they can borrow or create into massive Bitcoin purchases. They've changed their company mission and even recently started calling themselves a Bitcoin treasury company. Executive Chairman Saylor is polarizing, to say the least. Some see him as a hero, others see him as a CIA asset. Now, some Bitcoiners choose to invest or speculate in MicroStrategy, and this isn't inherently bad. Do we get mad at Adam Back for dabbling in crypto trading, or Samson Mow owning a weird video game using an Ethereum token? I think the fruits of their action in Bitcoin indicate their heart, but explorers, they'll continue to explore, even if they've already found the promised land. And for the record, full disclosure, I have been a buyer of MicroStrategy stock for years. But is someone who's buying MSTR actually accelerating hyper-Bitcoinization? And I'd have to say, absolutely not. The key feature that gives Bitcoin its value is the ability to custody and exchange in a trustless and permissionless manner. You don't know where the keys of the 423,000 Bitcoin are located, so you can't send or store that value the way you see fit. Now, if you can't tell the difference between hyper-Bitcoinization and getting fiat rich off a stock associated with a growing industry, then I'm not going to fix that blind spot for you in the next 10 minutes. So we just got to move on. Now, MicroStrategy has also become polarizing in the Bitcoin space for a few reasons. And the first reason, which I think is silly, is people just don't like a single company buying up all that Bitcoin. At the time of this recording, that total is 423,650. Now, I thought Bitcoin was an optional network. And if they want to spend their cash flows accumulating Bitcoin, then I suppose you should have bought it before them. And I think many of us forget that wealthy entities stay rich not only because of the Cantillon effect, but because they're observant and can adjust to new market forces without an ego. So all the poor people should learn from those particularly rich and check your ego at the door. Now, Michael Saylor has adamantly preached that Bitcoin is a capital asset and avoids the medium of exchange narrative like his life depends on it. He's also phasing out the importance of self-custody in his recent talks. Let's watch a couple of clips.
But that's in fact what happens when you actually store value. Now, low frequency medium of exchange, in order for Bitcoin to have its anti-fragile properties, and for it to have utility, we have to be able to move it on occasion. Maybe once a year, I move it from one cyber crypto bank to another one, or one cyber vault to another one, or once a decade, or maybe when I'm going to die, I need to transfer it to somebody or split it between my daughter and my son. Maybe once a year, I have to take 5% of my Bitcoin out of my vault, convert it to fiat, and then break that into 100,000 little parts and put it on Apple Pay and use it to pay for Ubers and Domino's Pizza.
Greater supply held by fewer large institutions. Does that increase the risk of seizure and confiscation like we've seen with gold? And is that not exactly what Bitcoiners don't want to happen?
No, I think it's the opposite. I think that when the Bitcoin is held by a bunch of crypto anarchists who aren't regulated entities, who don't acknowledge government or don't acknowledge taxes or don't acknowledge reporting requirements, that increases the risk of seizure. If a country in desperation, if China knew that there were underground crypto traders with billions of dollars of Bitcoin in their midst that didn't pay taxes, the Chinese would probably try to shut that down, and that's what they do. So normally the risk is greater when they're unregulated private entities that are perceived to be holding the asset. When you have regulated public entities like BlackRock and Fidelity and JP Morgan and State Street Bank holding the asset, well, all the lawmakers and all the law enforcement arms, they're invested in those entities, right? So there's no way that all the senators and all the congressmen are going to seize the assets from Fidelity and BlackRock or Vanguard, because that's where all their retirement money is invested. So
Saylor is doing what many Bitcoiners think they want governments to do: print money to buy Bitcoin. He's just doing it in the form of debt creation and issuing new equity in his company. Have you ever taken out a line of equity on your house? Do you have a credit card or 2 or 5? This really isn't any different. Yeah, he gets better fiat rates, but it's the world we live in, and we're trying to change that. If MicroStrategy didn't have that 400,000 Bitcoin, most of that would be in accounts of short-term traders. And in that scenario, Bitcoin might as well be Dogecoin. But there are some people who still categorize buying MSTR stock as literally buying Bitcoin. And this is tragically wrong. First off, not your keys, not your coin. That was the motto, but now it's changed in favor of cheerleading MicroStrategy. Yet then, even though the Bitcoin valuation has been more lucrative right now, a downturn for MSTR is not the same as a Bitcoin retraction. Bitcoiners are hardened and stubborn against bear market forces. MicroStrategy holders are fair-weathered and are not there for the monetary revolution. This cycle with MicroStrategy in the forefront of everyone's attention, they're going to see a brutal sell-off the minute market sentiment turns sour. And the last thing we're going to say about them in a market downturn is they're trading at a premium to the underlying asset, Bitcoin. Nevertheless, it is sad that hardly any other major companies recognize the value of Bitcoin like MicroStrategy has, with the exception of a few miners. And just recently, Microsoft rejected the proposal to hold Bitcoin as a treasury asset. But it's sad for them, not you. Bitcoin will thrive in the free market, and that just means simply more Bitcoin for the likes of those watching. And you know, MicroStrategy, they're very similar to El Salvador as the first and only nation state for years to adopt Bitcoin as a medium of exchange, or the Kingdom of Bhutan as the OG government Bitcoin miner. It's a lonely road being first, but we should remember that many of us are the only Bitcoiner in our immediate circle. So if you can have conviction, certainly you should sympathize with MicroStrategy in these two nations. Now, if MicroStrategy wants to sit on their Bitcoin like a rock and create some sort of mutant fiat financial vehicle, that's their own prerogative. You can't force their potential customer base to value Bitcoin more than they already do. The prospective offering is just a sign that people out there still just want their government currency. Saylor's just the messenger exposing the truth, so we shouldn't shoot him.
And there's every indication that nation states are embracing it. Jerome Powell says it's a digital asset. Christina Lagarde says it's a digital asset. The head of the SEC taught a class on it. I think that people understand it's not a threat to the dollar, by the way. What's going to happen is the US dollar is going to be the world reserve currency, and it's going to run on billions and billions of mobile devices. And the digital asset that underlies that currency is going to be Bitcoin.
Now, if hyper-Bitcoinization is a thing, then fiat will then be worthless, and so will this product. But if fiat sticks around longer than we would like to admit, there will be a large contingency of people, countless people, who will never ever touch Bitcoin like they never touch gold. And there will be just a few of us who discovered and benefited from Bitcoin's price accumulation. Now, it's not our perfect utopia, but it does not preclude Bitcoin's continually increasing purchasing power. And that makes it ever more important to recognize the chief earthly aim of this generation is to acquire as much Bitcoin as possible for whatever timeline we get. And I think it's fairly clear now with 100K Bitcoin that Bitcoin's winning is inevitable. It's just a matter of how many innings we're going to play. I am Sir Ulric, like my father before me. If you don't have a secure stack, you're going to want to have that decision back.